don't know if Maggie's there or not. No. Is everyone back? Is Andrea's there? Yep. Maggie? Ah, she's back. Okay. Oh, we've got a cat as well. How lovely. Okay, now I'm going to tell the story. And there was a thing last week about, I'm not sure if it was Madison that actually said it, but she said, I relax into the story and then I think, oh, I should be thinking about this. And it's like, no, you shouldn't actually. No, you can think about it when you listen the second time round. But the first time round, we have a thing in storytelling where we talk about there's three people in, or there's three things in this relationship. There's the listener, there's the teller, and there's the story. And the story encompasses both. So allow yourselves to sit back, find a comfortable position to be in, where you're going to be able to listen. And just put your listening ears on, drop into your heart space, and let the story just come in waves over you. No thinking. This week's story is, well, it's possibly of Russian origin, but there's also versions from various places in Eastern Europe. So, okay. Once upon a time, there was a king and a queen, and they were very happily married. They had been king and queen together for a very long time. They were in their middle ages now. I don't know what middle age is actually. Let's say they were in their early 40s. But they were happy and they worked together brilliantly. Their relationship was based on love and trust, and they got on so well. Well, they would go about their kind of kingly and queenly duties, and the king, who he was in charge of all the knights and the soldiers and things, and he loved nothing better than to go down and to see them training, but everything was very quiet. I mean, their kingdom was, the people were happy, there were no wars, it was great. And to be honest, he was looking for a bit of excitement. He loved it all, but he just had that extra bit of testosterone and he wanted to get out there. So one day, a messenger came and told him that there was a king, a foreign king, who was attacking and marauding the kingdom next to him. And he got on really well with the king who was the next door king. So he decided that he would go and help. So he spoke to his wife and he said, right, well, it's up to you. You know exactly what to do. So you're in charge. He told his ministers, the queen is in charge. She knows exactly what to do. And I trust her implicitly. So that's that. I'm off to help our neighbors. So he got on his horse and took his army with him and off he rode. Well, the queen just got on with life, because that was it, really. She knew exactly what to do. She was a good queen. And so she got on, and the months went by and the king didn't come back. And a year went by and there was still no sign of the king. And then 2 years, and then 3 years. Now, she really missed him. She loved him. And she was getting really concerned about what could have happened when one day a messenger came through. And this messenger had a message from the king. And the king had gone, he'd fought this foreign king and he'd lost. He'd been defeated and he was taken prisoner. And now he had decided that the only way for him to get out was for the queen. She must sell everything. She must sell the castles, all the treasures, the jewels. She must sell everything, get this money together, and it must be used as a ransom. Well, the queen got the message, and she didn't share it with anybody. She just thought about it, and she worried about her husband and felt that he'd been in prison all this time. I mean, oh, poor man, how awful. But you know what? If she was to sell all the castle and all of the lands and the treasures, what if it wasn't enough and the foreign king just took the money? Well, what if she sent somebody else with the money and they went off with it? Or what if she took it herself and he took her prisoner as well? There were so many things that just didn't make sense. And she paced around in her living quarters. She paced and she sat and she breathed, and she looked out of the window and the moon was shining full. And then she had an idea. Ha! I know exactly what to do. And what she did is she chopped all of her hair off. I know, what a surprise. She had decided that the only way that she could rescue the king was to actually take on the persona, to dress up as a lute player. She was a very accomplished lute player and had a beautiful voice. So she chopped all her hair off. She got a beautiful jacket and she set off without telling anybody. She just left. So that was that. She set off on this journey and she journeyed and she journeyed. And as she journeyed, her skin became very brown from the sun. Her coat, all the bright colors on her coat became dusty and worn. And after a month, she arrived at the foreign king's camp. And she sang. She sat underneath. It was a castle. She sat underneath the castle and she sang and she played this lute. And the king heard her and he sent his guards to bring her up. Him, because they thought it was a boy. So she went before the king and the king said, oh, you have such a beautiful voice and you play so beautifully. Play some more for me. So all evening she sat and she played for the king. And at the end of it, the king said, please stay with us a few days. Stay with us until you want to move on. And then I will give you your heart's desire. And so she did. For 3 days, she sang and she played to this king. And he loved it. He could feel the passion and the emotion. And at the end of 3 days, she said to the king, she said, now it is time for me to go. And he said, oh, I thank you for your time. What is your heart's desire? And she said, it's lonely on the road. I would like one of your prisoners to take with me, to keep me company. So as it is, she went down into the prison. There was her husband. He didn't recognize her. She had short hair. She was tanned and looked completely different. She said, this one will do. And so they said goodbye and off they went on the road. Well, the king was so grateful to her, but he didn't even know that she was his wife. He really thought that this lute player, this young lad, had rescued him. And so when he got to the borders of his own country, he turned to the lad and he said, I am okay now. This is my kingdom. He said, what can I give you? I will give you anything. And the lute player, the queen, said, no, it has been my pleasure. Now, the queen knew a shortcut, so she rushed back to the palace before the king got there. And of course, the king arrived and everybody was, hooray, hooray, the king is home. And it took him some time to get into the palace. The queen had gone in the back way. She'd put on her clothes, she'd put a headdress on to cover her short hair, and she went out to greet the king. And the king looked at her and he said, where have you been? Why did you not do what I said in the note? And at that point, one of the ministers stepped forward and said, "But your lord, my lord, she had the message from you. She didn't share it with us. And then she disappeared. She didn't even tell us where she was going." Well, the king looked at the queen and he turned his back on her and he said, "I do not know what to think." Well, the queen was beside herself because she had thought that she would be able to tell her story in the quiet of their own chambers, not a story for everybody in the court to hear. So she turned and she went back to her room. She took off her queen's clothes and she put back on the lute player's coat and took her headdress off. And she went outside and she went to the courtyard and she took her lute and she started to sing the song that was the favorite of the king. And the king rushed out to the courtyard and he said, "Here is my rescuer, this young man here. He was the one that saved me." And at that, the queen took off her coat and she said, "Do you not recognize me, my lord? For it is your queen. I am the one that rescued you." And at that point, the king, he felt such shame because he hadn't recognized her and he had judged her without knowing anything. But all was well because they loved and they trusted and they ruled that kingdom for many, many years to come because of the queen. So that's called the lute player. Present the masculine and the feminine in their midlife. So, they're already settled, they're already secure in themselves. So that was how it started with the two of them. They were very aligned at that point. But, but like you picked up on the king just needed to go off and put it all out of balance again. But did he? Because he was just, it's like, "Oh, I just need to go off and find myself, well, I'm okay here, dear. I'll look after the kingdom." That's what we'll do. So it was all okay. And if he hadn't been gone, if he hadn't been captured, then it probably would have been fine. He would have come back, he would have been a hero, they just would have got on with it. But there are several things here. One, that he got captured and he was away for so long. Two, that she continued and everybody in the kingdom was happy during that time. But when she got that note, that was when everything changed. Because up to that point, we don't know how she was. We just know that she was doing a fantastic job. She was more than capable of running a kingdom and everybody was healthy and happy and great. Nobody missed the king, apart from her by the sounds of it. But she kept him in her heart because he was her other half. He was the masculine and the feminine. But when she got the note, instead of following it through, the king, when he'd written it, he used his logical, his rational mind. So do this, do this, do this, and this will happen. So, sell the castle, the treasures, everything else, just get the money to me and pay the ransom and everything will return to normal. But she read that and knew that that wasn't the case. Now, the reason she knew was because she had the feminine, what they call feminine intuition, a woman's intuition. She just thought, hang on a minute, and she questioned it, and she asked those three questions. What if I sell everything, take the money there, and the king decides to capture me, or the money's not enough, and so he has both of us? Then the people of the kingdom, they'll be rack and ruin. What if I give the money to somebody else and they go off with it? The what ifs. So she knew that she had to take this on for herself. She just knew that whole thing of sitting there and pacing and was trying. It's like when we're when we're trying to, I think I said earlier on in the course that there's that thing that you cannot find a solution to a problem with the same brain that created it. So for her, the rational and the logic of the king was not working for her. So she had to sit. And when she was looking at the full moon, that was when the creative thought came in, the creative thought process. And there's something that happens in stories. I tell a lot of stories about women who cross-dress. And the reason they do it is because it's easier to be a man in a man's world than it is to be a woman. Now, for this one, she assumes that automatically. She does not tell the minister because she knows that they will disagree with her. They will, I mean, they could do anything really. So she doesn't tell them. But she knows that she has to go in disguise and that it's easier to go in the disguise of a young person, but a young man, because she won't get the hassle that they get otherwise. So she takes that role. So by the time she gets there, she is unrecognizable. She certainly doesn't look like a queen. She doesn't behave like a queen. She's using her feminine intuition and her creativity the whole time, right up to the point where she says, when he says, I'll give you your heart's desire, it's just like brilliant. Okay. And she stays with 3 days with him before, so she doesn't just go straight for it. And I don't know why, really, why she doesn't tell the king immediately. But it seems to me like there is a thing, and I've done it myself, where I think, no, I'm going to wait. I'm just going to wait and see if this man can work it out for himself. I'm not going to tell him everything all the time. I'm not going to live his life for him. Okay, you work it out yourself. So she doesn't say anything. And then she wants to surprise him as well, because maybe she's just so proud of herself. Hey, I've fooled everybody, even my husband. Yay! This is going to be so good. I'm going to tell him about this. But I'm not going to tell him until we're in that special place in our bedchamber. Then I'll reveal my whole story. I can tell him my whole heart. I can tell him how much I missed him, how I planned this, how his message didn't work, how the journey that I went on, what the other king was saying, how I felt. She could say the whole thing. She didn't just want to blurt it out, because it's private, really. It's a private kind of thing that she had done by herself. So I think that's why she didn't tell him. And to have had that disruption, again, it was her intuition that made her go back and change her clothes, instead of saying, well, you bastard, right, I'm off. I've had enough. You could go fight wars, I'm going off. So instead she went and she revealed herself in the best way that she knew how. And at the end, I said to Mel, I've never put that word shame into this story before, but when I was telling it tonight, it just kind of came out. And I think why is because of the imbalance. It's that thing of I think it's partly to do with having been with a man who never said sorry about anything, but it is that thing of the masculine is much more kind of linear thinking. So there isn't that creativity, that circular thinking that arrives at, oh my God, I really messed up. I'm so sorry. That's quite a female thing to do, a feminine thing to do. So I think that brought it back into balance, was that he recognized what an arse he'd been, and so they were able to go on. They would go forward together, having grown. But the key thing to this, and what this session really is about, is that she listened to her intuition, and that, remembering that the intuition is creative. So our feminine strength, our wisdom, our knowledge, our intuitive self are all, they're not logical, they're not rational, they just arise, and you can you go with them. You just like Maggie and her keys, she knew that little voice, and I've done that myself so many times, so it's about us learning when our intuition is speaking to us. And that's the biggest takeaway, is that she listened to her intuition. So I'll hand you back to Amy.
Can I ask a question, please? If women have both male and female energies inside them, and men have both male and female energies inside them, how come so many men can't say they're sorry?
Because it's culturalization. It's about the patriarchy. We have all been oppressed. So patriarchy hasn't just affected women, it's affected both men and women.
So it's not about their own energies, because if they listened to their own energies, then they would be able to integrate both of them and put them together just like we can.
If they were able to be more in touch with their more feminine aspects of their energy, then they would. But
Okay.
an awful lot of men just haven't been brought up to be in touch with
to contact that. Okay.
Legend.
Thank you.
Bye, Amy.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that, Maggie. That's really important. And I think that also, you know, biology and physiology is a massive factor as well, because, you know, we have a lot more estrogen and all that kind of jazz, which just helps us be more in touch with our emotions a lot more than some men anyway. So yeah, thank you for bringing that, Maggie. Oh yeah, and what a juicy story. It's so amazing. And I was saying to Suzanne and Mel earlier that I've just written down like giant letters, like intuitive messages. And the thing that stood out to me the most was when she gets the letter, when the Queen gets the letter with all these instructions of what she needs to do. She's just like, no, this doesn't feel right. And she's thinking and she's feeling, and there's something that's kind of stopping her from just taking action. And yeah, that I know I was saying as well that that for me is kind of getting more and more prominent. So it's like a full body something, you know, whether it's I'm making a decision or I'm about to, you know, do something, and there's just this full body like lightning bolt of like, hang on, or, you know, like you said, Maggie, about this voice come in. So yeah, and just thinking about how this beautiful masculine and feminine energy, bringing that into, I'm really a massive fan of science and I love to understand things. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the brain and the belly, which is also our enteric nervous system, which is essentially a big part of us that gives us feedback all the time and does allow us to feel those intuitive messages. And it runs all the way down from our throat, all the way down, all through our digestive tract. And it's literally like got a life of its own. And it's incredible. So, you know, that kind of saying when, you know, you've got a gut feeling, or you've got like a lump in your throat, or you've got butterflies in your tummy, you know, that's all coming from like this beautiful place that kind of bridges the unseen with the physical, right? And I find it so fascinating. So I'm going to send out some links a bit more about that in the email, but I just thought that for this week we'd all kind of, if your challenge or your mission, if you choose to accept, is to kind of tap into what shape and form your intuitive messages take. So sometimes it's really like a clear word that comes out of nowhere. Sometimes it's a sensation. Sometimes it's a feeling that kind of arises and you're not really quite sure what it is. Sometimes it's like a full body like freeze. You know, if you're like physically moving, sometimes your body would just stop if there's like a car coming that you haven't quite clocked, or, you know, you can just sense that something in you senses that something dangerous is nearby. So yeah, so that's our invitation for this week, is to really figure out or be curious around what shape and form the intuitive messages come to you, and kind of just learning the language that your body and your soul and your heart kind of speaks to you, and then gently learning how to trust that and learning to then take action from that. Does that make sense? Cool. So yeah, so we thought we'd and also, you know, figuring out how it kind of feels in your body as well. So you can sometimes when I get really nervous, for example, like I'll get like a really uncomfortable tummy, you know, like learning these kind of sensations and trusting that your body is sending you these messages. And yeah, like I guess like the king as well, like the archetype of this king, like you were saying, Suzanne, who's been also affected by the patriarchy, you know, the masculine, that kind of unbalanced masculine just sort of says, oh, we'll just dismiss those things, we'll just dismiss those feelings and sensations, and we'll just carry on because, you know, we need to get on, when actually sometimes it could be a really awesome creative solution that could enhance your life, your experience, and applying that to food as well. So we're going to be, you know, every time you sit down to eat, whether it's a snack or a meal, just taking a moment, and just like the Queen kind of looks at the moon, just taking a moment, taking a breath, and being like, oh, is this going to nourish me right now? Is this going to, you know, really satisfy me? Am I physically hungry? Am I emotionally hungry? And, you know, giving yourself permission to like feel the full experience of that meal, like smelling it, looking at it, tasting all those lovely tastes and the textures, just kind of trusting that everything in you knows intuitively what feels good. So it kind of be in relationship with food or outside, because it's all connected, right? Our relationship with food is an absolute mirror of our relationship with life. So everything, although we're not always talking directly about food, it's all comes back to that, and it's like a really beautiful reflection of those things. So I have recorded this bit. I feel like I just sort of blur at you, but I have recorded it, so hopefully you'll get a chance to listen again. And as usual, I'll send you an email with everything, all the invitations for this week, so you can just look at it in your own time and at your own pace as well. Yeah, awesome. Did you want to add anything, Suzanne? Oh, you're on mute.
I don't think so. I love that that thing that you said about our relationship with food is a reflection also of things that are going on in our lives anyway. You know, I think that's so important. So even though we're not necessarily mentioning food when we're doing this, you know, we can actually look at it as a reflection, and I think that's so important. And I liked in the book, I've paraphrased this a little bit, but she said, and I think this is worth all of us remembering, is always remember at the center of your being is a wise and compassionate woman who knows you, and her guidance, if you live well, will not be wrong. You know, so at the center of your being is this queen, you know, and she's got your back. So your intuition is like the queen, really. You know, she's wise and compassionate, and she's like, yeah, come on, we can be creative about this. You got this. So I really like that. Wise and compassionate woman is part of you. So
yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Suzanne. Yeah, well, so before we have our checkout, I'm just going to invite you all to really just sink in for a moment and close your eyes. Maybe have a stretch out, or maybe you need to have a bit of a yawn. And just again, lots of words have been spoken. So you want to just come back down into our hearts, come back down into our bellies, maybe even place your hands on your belly. And let it take up space as you inhale. Maybe you want to give a voice to your exhale as well. And letting your breath be like a tide or a wave, just coming in and out, up and down. And this beautiful dance between the intuitive, the creative, and the more action-based or expression-based. Maybe even place one hand on your belly and one hand on your throat or your heart. And really breathing in this trust that inside and within you, there's this wise queen. Maybe even doing this every time that you eat over the next week. And even if you remember, you're just sitting, having a cup of tea, really giving yourself just 5 minutes or even 2 minutes to just check in with your beautiful enteric nervous system, your brain in the belly, your brain in your heart, and figuring out and being curious and open to the different ways that your body will communicate with you. And sometimes it will make sense and sometimes it won't, and it's all okay. It's all an experiment, it's all a learning. So be really gentle with yourselves as well. Give your belly a good rub, give it some love. Yeah. Awesome. So whenever you're ready, just open your eyes and come back to this space. And we'll have a checkout. So if I call your name, if you just want to say maybe one thing that you're taking away from today.